So Nasra, why did you pull down the Colston statue the other week?
First of all, I did not pull it down, okay? But what I will tell you is that I got a very good seat in seeing it be pulled down. And it was, yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. Like, it was just a great celebration. Like, everyone was screaming, shouting, stomping on the statue. I was like, oh, okay. But no, it was great. I feel like, yeah, you know what? It was crazy, yeah? We were at the back of like the protest, right? And like I wanted to chant. I was like, oh my god, I want to chant. I want everyone to chant with me. Like, let's go. Like, I'll start off and then you lot join in as a choir. Let's do this. So I was like shouting like Black Lives Matter. I was shouting Black Lives Matter, and the energy wasn't really there. Like, everyone was kind of like just like, there wasn't that shouting. I was like, you know what, this is unacceptable. I was like to the homies, like, there's further down in the protest, people are like cheering and screaming and shouting. Like, I feel like that's where it's more kind of like the energy's at. So I was like, let's go over there, like, you know, let's go, and we'll start something over there. So we're like walking to try and get to where the bigger part of the crowd is. And then as I'm looking forward, I just see a rope around the statue. And I'm like, because I'm short-sighted, so I'm squinting. I'm like, what the hell is going on down there? I'm like, guys, they're taking down a statue. They're taking down a statue. So I'm running, I'm pushing past people. I'm like, no, I have to witness this. And then we kind of got to the front of it, and it was just, I was like, I can't believe this, because I've known about the history. A lot of my friends didn't know as much, but I've known about the history of trying to take down that statue. So yeah, it was great to see it firsthand. I was like, I can't believe I'm here right now seeing this happen. Like, it's about time.
Did it seem like it was like a planned thing or just like sporadic?
I feel like it looked like it was a planned thing. Like, they were like, okay, cool, we've got, like, there's a protest coming up. Like, let's plot and plan on how we're going to do this. Because you don't randomly just carry around rope.
Yeah.
And not everyone can climb a statue that's like all the way up there. So I feel like they've had to kind of like coordinate to do that. So, but yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, it looked like a moment, and I've never seen so many like crazy white people in one place at the same time. Like, they were on it. Like, they looked like they pulled down the statue.
I think they did. I feel like they used their white privilege and were like, do you know what, we're gonna use this to do something good. And I feel like, yeah, like, it was just great to see like so many white people like rolling it into the harbour. Because I was looking at the pictures and I was like, oh my god, like, let me just see the demographic makeup of who's doing what kind of thing. And I think it's a good thing that it was majority of them was white people, because I don't know what or how the reaction would be like if it was majority black people taking that down. Because yeah, they'll probably call them, yeah, it'll probably be taken further, but luckily it wasn't. So that was good.
How do you feel about the whole kind of like the mad, obviously it's a lot to unpack, but like, yeah, just this crazy sort of awakening that's happened. Like, obviously, you know, people like me and you like been on this thing for a little while now, but how do you feel about kind of new people hopping in, and do you feel a bit weird about that, or are you kind of like welcoming to it?
See, I was having to think about this, and I think I had mixed feelings, because I think on one hand, I felt guilty about it as well. I felt like I was going through so many different like emotions, and I felt so guilty, because I was like, okay, on the one hand, it's fantastic to see so many people getting involved, but on the other hand, I'm seeing people getting involved who used to banter me for being an activist. I'm seeing people who are getting involved who used to say problematic things. I'm seeing people getting involved who haven't acknowledged their own biases. And I was just like, okay, maybe people, of course people can change, but I was like, so we're all changing in the same space of time, or like, is this a trend? Like, what's really going on? And it's quite frustrating that I feel like there's a lot of people who, when white collective voices come together, change is done much quicker. In a week, so much has happened, you know, like so much has happened in a week. And I was just like, okay, cool, like, this is great, like, I'm proud to be part of this, but someone's been here for years, and like no one's been listening to the same extent or to the same rapid like response kind of thing. So I think it was a very mixed emotion experience, and I think a lot of people are doing like performative activism, but again, like, you can't force people to continue to be activists if they are not going to do it. So yeah, it was mixed feelings.
Yes, it's a weird one. I think yeah, you've kind of got to try and look at the positives in the whole thing. And like, yeah, but it is weird as well. Like, I don't know, how do you feel about, because now things like, you know, like them taking down like old episodes of stuff and like Little Britain and stuff. How do you feel about that? Did you ever watch that when you were younger or not?
I did, and I was like, obviously when I remember me and my family used to watch it when we first came to England, and we were like, wow, because obviously we didn't know English like that, so we were like, wow, like what is this like program? Like, this is crazy. Like this is so like explicit, and it was funny at the time. Do you get it? Like it was funny at the time because I didn't understand. I didn't know what race. To be honest, I knew what racism was, but I didn't understand like the structural racism and the history of it, etc. So I think to some extent I was like, okay, like it's a bit crazy that I used to watch that and enjoy it and kind of like engage with it. And I think, was it Come Fly With Me? I think that one got taken down too. Come Fly With Me. When I used to watch that, I used to be like, I can't believe that these are getting away with this. Like there's blackface in there, there's racism, there's stereotypes, there's all sorts. And I was like, I can't believe this is happening. Obviously I watched it, yeah, but like I knew it was wrong. Like,
jokes?
Huh?
Did you catch some jokes?
Okay, a couple. But I knew it was wrong. Like I knew, like, okay, I need to decolonize my mind because this is not acceptable, because this is actually playing into stereotypes. So I think it's good that they've taken it down. Yeah, I just like it's good that they've taken it down, acknowledged why it needs to be taken down. Because I think you don't need to be doing blackface and all sorts of problematic things to be funny. I feel like there's so much black content out there that is not problematic. And it goes to show that you don't need to be racist or discriminatory in order to put out funny content.
Yeah, and fair play to the makers, like Matt Lucas and David Walliams are like, they wouldn't do that today. I think I was chatting to my brother a little bit about this. Like, obviously, fairly recently there was this outrage with Simpsons, and like Apu, the character of Apu, is obviously takes the piss out of a culture in a lot of ways, and it's like, in some ways it's not so much like this satirical depiction of that character. It's just that you don't have, that's like the first Indian character that so many people are actually being exposed to, in the same way that like some people might watch Come Fly With Me and that the black woman character is like the only interaction with like a black person, or the first interaction with a black person they're seeing, because there isn't that whole range of different, it's not like how white people are represented in so many different ways.
Yeah, that's so true.
I think that's maybe where some of the main problems come from, but I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think I feel like it also just reinforces stereotypes of different groups. And again, I feel like, as you said, like if the representation of black people, Asian people are going to be those characters, then people are going to continue to be racist and continue to kind of take the piss, because these are the representation that they see and these are the content that they're consuming. So I think to that extent, like it was time for it to go. And we're in a different era. Like it's time for things to change, kind of thing. Accept the mistakes and change it, because that's all we have out there. Some people are like, no, let's keep it how it is. We need to stick on, like we need to stick by our values. But these are, if things are bad, if like the culture is horrible, like you've got to move past it. You've got to cancel it. You've got to get rid of it and create a new one. And that's how a healthy society works to some extent.
Yeah, definitely. I think my only other concern was that, like, I don't want it to be like an excuse for like the big companies like Netflix or whatever to like get off the hook. It's kind of like their like little jump for joy of like saying, hey, look, we're woke, we're doing this. I kind of feel like there's that vibe as well. But I don't know. Because obviously there is a lot of talk about like virtue signaling and stuff. Do you think that it's that, or do you think it's actually just people wanting to make change and help? Do you know what I mean?
I think it's a bit of both, because I feel like even when it comes to like white people in general, like they have this idea like, oh, like I'm ashamed to be white, or like we're not all like that, and I think it's that kind of attitude that brands are putting out too. And I feel like if we're gonna really move forward, we need to acknowledge the faults within our own like organizations and our own kind of like structures, because I feel like if Netflix are out here saying, oh my god, like we're amazing, like look at us, we're putting out all this content, but internally what's going on? You know, like what is going on internally and what kind of content are you actually putting out and how do people feel about that? Because I think something that I've seen quite a lot is a lot of brands are kind of trying to appease their customers, appease their audiences, but then you ask them or you ask the employees to talk about their experiences as people of color, Black people, and is a different type of situation. You know, they're going through racism, microaggressions, being treated terribly by senior management. And I think if we're going to work on external, let's work on internal too. And that's something that a lot of brands, organizations are not doing. Yeah, it's a shame, really. I just feel like a lot of it isn't authentic. I think a lot of this activism, a lot of this is not authentic. It's more because I've seen it behind the scenes. I've worked in organizations where a kind of like something bad has happened in the world, and they're like, oh my god, we need to put out a statement. Oh my god, we need to show the people that we care. Rather than, okay, cool, let's take a moment and actually think about how does this affect the people internally? How does it affect whoever we're trying to cater to externally, and what can we do to make it a better situation, or how can we contribute positively, rather than let's go for a statement, you know? So I think, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
For sure. How have you been, like, you know, coping through all this time and like looking after yourself? Because I think not only is the pandemic a massive strain on everyone's mental health, it's like to then get this piled on top. Like, how have you been managing it all?
I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh my god, I've been doing yoga. No, I have not been managing this. I think I've just been like not a robot, but like I've been trying to kind of just keep going. Like, don't think about it too much because, or don't think about it too much emotionally, because I'm a very emotional person, and when I have an emotional connection to things, it can just spiral. Like I'll cry for days, and you know, it's not healthy. Like I can't cope. So I feel like I just thought to myself, cool, like just try and take some time off social media, and don't feel guilty that you are doing that, because I think sometimes trying to be like, okay, do you know what, I'm not gonna tap into the social media or try and consume this information for a bit. I was like, oh my god, like, but am I being a cop out? Because people are actually going through this. If I switch off or don't switch off, people are gonna still continue to face brutality, gonna continue to protest, and I have some sort of duty to like at least share like the information that's being put out. So I think trying to remind myself to not feel guilty was kind of like a key thing for me, because I was still working, I was still kind of putting out content, I was still trying to engage to some extent, but yeah, like I just it was a mental thing for me rather than like a physical. But I haven't slept for like 2 weeks, and yesterday was the first time I slept properly because of everything that's been happening. Yeah, like it's just I feel like it's been quite difficult to just sleep and switch off, like mentally and physically. But I think right now, because things are a little bit quieter, it's a time to kind of reflect and rejuvenate to some extent.
Definitely. And do you also feel like, you know, because yeah, it's interesting that, yeah, you can feel a little bit guilty if you're not like doing something to help, but you know, as like a, you know, like a woman of color or whatever, it's like why as well should there be a pressure for you to have to take on all these fights? Do you know what I mean? Like I almost feel like at a stage where it's like, look, we're doing our thing, like you lot need to sort out your shit. Like, you know, as like white people, I think sorry, racism is a white people's problem, and I think that's one of the things that people often forget, right? Because it's like Black people have done so much to spread the message about racism and whatever, that at some point, like white people just need to step up and do something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And I agree, you know, I agree so much. And I think it is a white people problem. And I think sometimes we forget that, like, actually, hold on, like, this is something that white people should be leading on and we support and, like, you know, consult on them. But that's not the reality. And I think the reality is that if it wasn't for Black people, no one would be doing anything. So I feel like that's why I'm like, I just physically, emotionally, I'm so attached to the cause that I can't just tap out, and I can't just let white people roam freely and be ignorant and just continue to be microaggressive or racist or whatever. I feel like it's not our duty, but unfortunately it is at the same time. Like, it shouldn't be our duty, but the reality is that as Black people, we do need to be at the front lines, because if we're not, no one else is. and that's not going to change because, again, white people have gone quiet since it's kind of the movement has died down online.
Yeah, not the far right though. The far right out here defending statues and that,
Yeah, like they're just doing. I feel like when it comes to like the far right, I feel like I hate the term far right because they are not. It's not the far right. They're racist. It's not like, oh, we've got the left over here and then we've got the right over here. No, these people are racist, and we need to call them that. I think the BBC called them like the anti-racist or whatever. I don't know what. Just something that was very much of a cop out and trying to just move away from this idea of calling them a racist. And I just think that just seeing so many of them out there yesterday embarrassing themselves was a joy to see to some extent. Like it was great because I'm like, we don't need to keep telling you guys that you are all just an embarrassing group of people, but you guys are going to show us. You're going to do the legwork for us, so that's okay. But I think at the same time, it just goes to show, like, just and cement what kind of reality a lot of us are living in and what kind of society it is, So it's a shame.
And obviously, like we both know that the Colston thing goes back a long time. Why do you think people always try to like sort of play the erasing history card with like the with statues and stuff, right? Because even like the statue of Churchill, like in my opinion, the Colston statue wouldn't have come down if at least like Bristol's had all the time in the world to put a little plaque on the side of it saying Edward Colston was a slave trader, etc., etc. In the same way, now they're all getting shook about Winston Churchill statues. So it's like, it's because you've got him up there and there's nothing saying that he's a divisive figure, he was responsible for starving out people, and being a racist. Like he genuinely just was pretty openly racist. So it's like, you're not going to account for the nuance in something like a statue. Then why are you suddenly kind of bringing up the, oh, you don't want to erase history argument?
I think I completely agree with what you're saying. I think it's quite interesting because the energy from a lot of people comes when it's time to not be racist and not kind of like support the anti-racist movement. It's weird. Like nobody cared about these statues. Nobody was actually going to go and see these statues or have any form of connection to them until they realized that they were racist or that it was time to take them down. And it was kind of interesting that all of these people, especially white people, came out from the countryside and the sticks to come to London and risk their health to defend a statue they know nothing about. And I think it's interesting that they say, oh, it's erasing history. It's not erasing history because the impact of that history is still alive to this day. And I think it's really important that we recognize that white people should not be at the forefront of the discussion when it comes to what is done with these statues, because you guys were not, your ancestors or your people were not the receivers of this oppression. We're not like, do you know what I'm trying to say? And I feel like it's time that white people recognize that what needs to be done is what the oppressed community wants to be done. And it's not a case of erasing history, it's actually remembering history, because half of history has been wiped out by by white people. Like nobody knew about Colston Hall and all these other statues until Twitter started talking about it, until it was removed. And that's when a lot of people were like, I didn't know that these guys were doing this. So actually, is it a case of history being erased, or is it a case of history not being told?
Good point. Well said. And it's it's deep, because it's like you can easily put comparisons up as well of like, well, why, like someone made a good example to me recently that like, so let's put a statue of Jimmy Savile up because he did some good stuff, and he did some bad stuff, but he's done some good stuff too. It's like, it should be, like you're saying, it should be the victims or the survivors of the oppression who kind of make that decision, right? In terms of like more, because I know you're passionate about like solution-based thinking as well, and I know you've done a lot of work in like the education system and universities. What makes you so passionate about getting more Black people in academia, and why do you think it's important?
Because I feel like, firstly, there's a lot of representation missing. If you look at the research reports on the Black attainment gap and what students are saying in universities, they're saying that we feel isolated. We feel like we don't feel like we're fitting in or integrated into university life because we don't see lecturers who represent us. We're not seeing staff members that represent us. And it's quite difficult because when you're learning about, for example, if you're learning about Black history or you're learning about anything to do with Black people in your degree and it's being taught by a white person, 8 out of 10, most of the time it's going to be problematic. Something problematic is going to be said. You're going to have to argue about your identity or the morals of it in your seminar, and it's going to be you, the one Black person, against the whole classroom and the lecturer. So I think that's one side of it, is that the environment, the culture within universities are more likely to change if there's a more diverse body of lecturers and like just Black staff. And I think secondly, I think it's really important that we see more Black academics because that reflects the content of work. I think it was interesting to see there was a certain type of illness. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a medical illness. And there was like a picture to kind of show what the symptoms of it was, but it was on a white body. And the symptoms of it was on the white body wasn't the same as it was on the Black body. But these are things that are not being told in medical like degrees and just medical content because of the fact that no one's speaking out about it, or we don't know about it because, you know, there's issues around Black issues don't get brought up unless it's by Black people. And I've realized a lot, sitting in a lot of rooms, unless there's Black people in the room, Black staff, no one's bringing up diversity. No one's bringing up diversity of thought, diversity of kind of just academia. And I think that's why it's so important to have more people coming into academia. And I think lastly, we need to ask ourselves, why are there not that many Black academics? Do we even know how to get into academia? Do Black people even know? You know, a lot of people don't even know that you don't need to have a master's to get in to do, what's it called? A PhD. Yeah, you don't need a master's to do a PhD. I told someone that like a few weeks ago and they were like, what? You don't? And I was like, yeah, man. These are trying to tell you that you need to go through the whole cycle and be there for like 10 years in order to kind of...
Maybe it depends on the PhD. I think with some science ones, you can go straight into it. But I think some of them might require a master's. But I hear what you're saying. I hear it's all complicated.
Yeah, I feel like it is complicated, but I feel like there's a majority or there's many PhD degrees that you don't need a master's for, that you can, because I feel like it's obviously, of course, there could be some that do. But I think this is, again, it's important that we have this information out there because so many people could be going to do a PhD without doing a master's because they were like, we don't want to invest that much into it. And I think this is information that needs to be kind of like put out there. And secondly, also scholarships as well. Like there's issues with scholarships. Who gets a scholarship to do a PhD? Who, like, how does that work? How do you get funding, kind of thing? All these different kind of tools and issues that are not being taught to the Black community. Again, no one's going to teach it until Black people are like, we need to teach this. So there's a lot of different issues as to why we need more Black academics or Black people going into academia.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's like, I think someone told me the other day that there's literally only like 2 Black professors in the country or something, which is crazy. I know we've got one at Bristol now, which is cool. But I completely.
I think it's 72. I think it's 72.
Okay.
Yeah, 72.
Lie to me.
Outside, but out of like 1,000 and something. Right. I think that's, yeah, out of like 1,000 and something, there's 72 Black professors in the country. Yeah.
Man,
maybe there's like 2 women, not sure. But yeah, it's a very, very small number.
And it's difficult. I think you're right. You know, there is a weird, you know, as someone myself, you know, doing my master's in history and having like white people teach me about slavery, there is a kind of weird, you know, dynamic there. And it's not about them not being informed or whatever, but I remember just a couple times in class, like I would want to bring up the importance of slave rebellion and resistance. And like, there was just a bit of tension because the lecturer or whoever might not have known as much about the resistance aspect. You know what I mean? So there's that awkward standoff if like you as a student might have some alternative perspectives to your lecturer. Did you experience anything like that when you were at uni?
Yeah, and I think it's just frustrating. I remember like because we had a module on Somali like history. Like there was a module or some there was some content that was on Somalis, and obviously not a lot of people know about Somali history that are outside of like the Somali ethnic background. And I remember there was this this is gonna be so big, but there was one lecturer who went to Somalia quite a lot to kind of like do work, Somaliland shall I say, to do work there, and he like wrote a book, and like there was just, you know, like he knew his stuff. I remember I was like, oh my god, like this is like so cool. Like at least there's somebody who like, you know, is trying to put Somalia on the map. Like it's great. And I spoke to him about it, and I was like, listen, like how come there's nothing on here? Like you're talking about like the kind of like the political government collapse of Somalia kind of thing, which is okay, cool, like whatever. But you're not really talking about tribalism, which had like a massive impact on how like Somalia actually fell apart. And he was like, no, like I don't know much about that. Like just like basically like be quiet kind of thing. Like you're like, you could just see he was rattled. And I was like, if there's a Somali lecturer teaching this, he would probably like, or she would probably like, they would know their stuff, and it will be like from a more broader, authentic perspective. But I feel like when you have like white people coming into these countries or trying to teach the history or like just content from just sub-Saharan African history, like it's frustrating because the lens that they have is so narrow, and it's so kind of like just very problematic at times, because they don't really see the whole picture. And it's like, how can I be telling you what you're missing on your research and the content that you're putting out, and you want to get touchy about it? Like really. So I think sometimes it's frustrating that we try and feed it back as well as Black students, and it's like, oh, like you don't know anything. And I remember there was one time we like I feel like when it comes to just in general, like I just think when it comes to academics and talking to them about feeding back about diversity of the content that they're providing is a bit of a touchy subject for them, because white fragility.
And of course, if you're like what I find kind of crazy about Russell groups as well is, you know, Bristol in particular has a very high number of like private school students. On top of that, with the dynamic with the lecturer, it's like you've got this dynamic of you, if you're from like a different background or whatever, and like you're being thrust into a space that's like dominated by kind of sort of upper middle class private school white kids. Like, can you speak like kind of to that, and how that feels, you know, being someone who's not from that kind of demographic, and how you feel in those spaces?
Oh my god, like I'm sure you understand too, but like, boy, that university and the students, yeah, like I hope some of them see this. You lot are treacherous, like you lot are treacherous. And I'm just like, the environment that the amount of us Black students that has struggled because of the fact that there's so many of these middle class white kids coming into university, and I don't know what it is. It's the microaggressions, it's the problematic views, it's the fact that there's nobody that you can relate to. They're comparing schools, they're comparing class, they want to call themselves broke when there's like 3K in the bank. Like it's crazy. And it's like, I think it's, my first year was like the worst year that I had at university, and I was gonna literally like drop out because I've had enough. Like, do you know what, I'm done. Like, you lot won, like I'm done. Because it was so difficult to navigate those spaces. And I remember like in Freshers Week, the first kind of, I tried to make some friends in it, like with the white people, because obviously like there was barely any Black people there. So I tried to make friends with them, and we were sat together, and they started to compare what class they were. Like, oh, who's middle class here? Who considers themselves working class? And then somebody proceeded to tell me that they love Kanye West and his music, and I was like, okay, like, do you know what I'm trying to say? It's those little kind of like in conversations, the environment that put you off. It's not like drastic somebody calling you the N-word to your face, which I'm sure some people have unfortunately faced, but it was just the day-to-day interactions that I had with these people. And I think doing a politics degree made it even worse, because when we had the politics of sub-Saharan Africa as a module, and the 9 out of 10 of the people in the classroom are white, and you're the only Black person. And we're talking about HIV and AIDS and education, and students want to kind of claim that the West brought education to, like, you know, sub-Saharan Africa, and they're more educated, so that's why we need missionaries and all sorts to come and sort out the HIV and AIDS pandemic in sub-Saharan Africa. When you're hearing these things, it's difficult to kind of just talk about it from a let's say academic point of view or like a logical point of view. Like the emotions, like I'm a black person, like I'm African, and I'm sitting here, you talking about my people like that, like in an ignorant way, and you went to private school, you paid thousands of money. Like how is this all happening right now? Because if I start shouting, if I start moving emotional, like I'm going to be labeled as being aggressive, and everyone's going to get scared. And it's these kind of like incidences that we have to deal with in university. And then there's another time where I remember some like a white girl said how like police brutality in the US is much worse than the UK. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, you know, the only difference is that they have guns over there and we don't over here. Like, have you heard about like, you know, all the deaths that happened in custody? Like, the facts were coming out. She started getting red, looking like she was about to cry. And I was like, oh my God, like, what about that? Like, am I just like, do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like, why are you getting scared? And I think it's those kind of incidences. And then let me not get started on Islamophobia, because that one was the worst. Like, I remember there were just being I remember just because I didn't wear hijab in university, like just dashed it off. And it was so cool. I was sat in a seminar on contemporary politics. Yeah, it always happened in politics. Sat in a seminar. I didn't like, oh gosh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just in politics class, just minding my own business, and just not talking to anybody because I just didn't business. Anyway, I'm hearing from a side of my ear that there was a discussion around Islam and Christianity, and it's just like, again, a white guy just sat there talking about Islam, and he had some interesting things to say. He was saying how Islam is bad, Christianity and Islam is just like really, really bad. Like it's all like, it's like oppressive. Like what? Like it just needs to be like, basically it needs to be eradicated. Like it's just
like
saying Boris Johnson on cocaine, basically. Like it was literally the rudest things. And obviously he didn't clock there was a Muslim in the classroom because I had a cap on and I was just, you know, very quiet. So I just put my head up and I was like, can you just, I was like, hi. I was like, sorry to interrupt your conversation. Like, can you just repeat what you said about Islam? Because as a Muslim, I'm really interested in what you have to say. And his face just went red. But he firmed it, like he backed his points, and he kind of just started saying how Muslim women are oppressed, and like how the Western Muslims are not as bad as the ones in the Middle East. And I was like, you can't say these things. I was like, you can't say these things. First of all, I was like, I'm a Muslim. I was like, I'm not oppressed. And he's like, oh, have you seen Saudi Arabia? I was like, let me tell you something about Saudi Arabia. So I just had to school him on that. And I think he was just going on and on. Then he said that the immigrants in like the UK should be grateful for everything that Britain has done for them. And I was like, whoa, have we heard about the British Empire? Have we heard about colonialism and slavery? And he was like, you're patronizing me. I was like, listen, it's not my fault that you read your information from the Sun, all right? So I was actually going in, like, I was angry. And then yeah, and then these like other classmates started being backup dancers for him and kind of just being like, oh my God, like you're just being so rude right now. And I was like, I'm being rude. I was like, this person's trying to tell me that I'm oppressed and like my religion's bad and is being Islamophobic, and I'm the rude one for retaliating to that. And then after the whole class finished, like he just tapped me on the back. I was like, good debate. You know, I was there triggered, my chest was hurting, and this guy can just walk out of the classroom, never think about it again, and just say good debate. Oh, and it also told me I was playing the race card.
It's deep. It's so deep because like,
yeah,
I think you make a really good point about like there's you have to, not only are you having to carry like this alternative history and understanding of racism that you have, but it's like if you actually have it in you, like, you know, you're quite a bold and brave person to speak up like that. Like if you have it in you to do that, you're actually at risk of making white people very uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? Just speaking sort of harsh truths can actually end up making white people red-faced and really upset. And it's like, wow, so you, in kind of defense of something that means a lot to you, you are then sort of upsetting, and obviously you don't want to upset people, you know, that's not, humans aren't like that, we don't just want to upset people. But I think maybe that speaks a lot to kind of what we were saying at the beginning about how, like, you know, a lot of this is, like, white people, if you educate yourself a little bit better on on racism and stuff and Islamophobia, and you will be able to perhaps not get so triggered when people are speaking half truths to you, maybe harsh truths, maybe. I don't know.
No, I agree. And I think it's important to remember as well, like white people get to feel uncomfortable for like 2 minutes of their lives. Us black people, people of color, those from minority identities, have to feel uncomfortable literally majority of our lives. You know what I'm trying to say? Majority of the time in our day-to-day lives. So I think it's just a bit cheeky from like white people to kind of be upset or not take it on the chin that these are the realities that they're putting on other people. Like this is the reality of the people that are living in this society and in other societies, and it's important for them to just let themselves feel uncomfortable for a bit, you know, put themselves in our shoes to some extent.
And but also, I guess, to what extent that, like, is it even sort of explicitly their fault, in the sense that, you know, everyone's like a product of their own conditioning, and like a lot of them just literally don't know better. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, is it a failure of the system to educate? You know what I mean? Like how I had probably a week, I learned slavery was like a 1 week thing for me at school. Like, I didn't learn anything about the British Empire. Like, so, you know what I mean? Because it's difficult to get, you know, it's obviously it's easy to get heated with individuals, but you do wonder, like, you know, I know a lot of white people who literally just they don't know any better. They haven't been educated. They haven't been exposed to the information. And maybe it's their duty to find that information, but I don't know.
I think you make a really good point, because we need to recognize that not everyone has access to the same sort of like information that, you know, people who are considered to be socially aware of issues are. But I think it's important, I guess, number one, that's why we need to have it taught in schools in a more authentic manner. But secondly, I think when you get to a certain age, when you get to university and you get to a certain age, you need to have, especially in this society that we live in now, where first of all, information is a little bit more easily accessible. But I think it's important that on a day-to-day interaction with other people, that you have an open mind, especially if you especially if you have a privilege. And I was talking to my friend about this today, actually, where we were talking about kind of like trans rights and kind of LGBTQ plus. And we were saying that, like, if somebody from, you know, who belonged to that group said to me, like, you know what, you are problematic, or these are the experiences that I'm going through, and, you know, straight people are like problematic and they're trash, da da da. You know, they're just saying all of these things that you'd hear like women saying like about men, like men are trash, and, you know, just instead of getting defensive, instead of being like, you know what, like, what were you talking about? You know, like, you lot are crazy. No, like, I've got to be open about it. I've got to be open-minded and listen and be like, you know what, you know more about your own identity than I do. So I've got to listen to and just see where you're coming from and hear your experiences, rather than just being like, you know what, I'm going to be defensive. And I think that's the attitude more people need to take on, is that if you don't know enough, either A, don't speak on it, or B, correct yourself and be like, you know what, let me be open-minded and actually hear what you're saying. If a Muslim is standing before you, if you're saying Islam is this and that, yeah, Islam oppresses women, and then I stand before you and tell you, actually, no, I think you're wrong on that. This is the reality of it, and I'm telling you as a Muslim, and you're like, no, that's not true. Then we have an issue here. We have an issue that's bigger than just, you know, you don't know any better. We have an issue of arrogance and utilizing your power to not want to listen to the voices that are less privileged than you.
Like, you know, I don't envy some of the shit you probably had to go through, but, you know, having to balance like the Islamophobia and the racism. I know we had a conversation about this, like, you know, a couple of years back or whatever, you know, about being a black Muslim, you know, and from Somalia and Africa. It's like, so many people don't even, because there's nuances within the nuances. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's deeper things within, which is obviously is a lot for people to grasp. But yeah, like, how have you, like, or what advice do you give actually to people who, you know, might be in a similar situation, who have your background of, like, you know, being an African Muslim, and that kind of almost like double two-pronged oppression vibe? Like, is that something that you've managed to navigate a little bit in your time on this planet?
I think it's just, I think I just speak out about it. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I'm the type of person that I just try and speak out on my platforms, or just in my day-to-day conversations. That's how I try and navigate it. But I think we've got a long way to go before black Muslim discussion is going to be put on the map, because we face Islamophobia from black non-Muslims, and then we have racism and anti-blackness from the Muslim community. And I think it's really, I think for people who are in the same position, I think it's just time for us to mobilize and speak out about it and do something about it. Because I remember that we had the event like a few years ago on is Islam racist or
Islam like black people?
Black people, yeah, that's it. And it was just a very vanilla kind of like conversation amongst the people, and very like everyone holding hands. And I was like, this is not what I put my highlighter on for. Like, these are not what I put my ghetto earrings on for. Like, I'll come here for like smoke. You know, we've got the Islamic society here, we've got the non-black Muslims here. Like, we need to actually have a frank conversation about the reality. And everyone just started spitting like, you know, like the sayings of the Prophet and like, you know, quotes from the holy book. And I was like, hold on, yeah, this is all great and lovely, but this is not the reality of how people are acting. And I think that's why I hate about the Muslim community, is that like whenever you try and bring up an issue, whether it's feminism, domestic violence, racism, they're like, oh, but you know, like we all got to love each other. And I'm like, yeah, but we need to actually speak about these issues. So I think we've got a long way to go before everyone starts to kind of just recognize the difficult intersection between being a black person and a woman and a Muslim.
And a Muslim, yeah.
Oh, there's a triple threat.
Yeah, no, it's mad. It's mad, and I think people can get caught up on the identity politics, because it's almost becoming. I've seen it like used as a joke, you know, like, oh, if you're a black Muslim disabled woman, you're like at the top of the, like, as if that's some kind of like exciting thing to be, because you are now at the top of society because of, you know, woke culture and like the identity politics kind of stuff that's playing out. That it's, yeah, people would like say, oh, well, everything's sorted for you now because now everyone wants to help you out. Like, does that piss you off? Like,
yeah, because it's like that isn't the reality, you know, like, and it's just trivializing the identities of people and identity politics, when actually it goes again beyond just, you know, the theoretical what it could look like, or what, you know, people are having these frantic fears of, or whatever. That is a case of who's more powerful, when actually people just want equality and to be treated like human beings. So it's really annoying that we have to constantly keep explaining these things again and again and again. But yeah, it's quite a frustrating thing to have a conversation over.
Yeah, deep. I'm sure you've been using plenty of your emotional labor over these last couple of weeks. I know I have.
Yeah, it's a lot.
What are your hopes for maybe where this all ends up? You know, have you got any like kind of optimistic views on this pandemic maybe creating like a positive paradigm shift, or even these new like racism kind of movements growing? Like, what's giving you hope right now?
I think young black people mobilizing is what's giving me hope, because they're the ones that are going to keep making change. But that's where the energy is to get it, and that's where the authentic, non-politically correct energy is. And I think that's what I hope continues, that they're going to be at the forefront of the conversation, and they're going to be at the forefront of the movement. And I hope that the organizations and the brands that are putting these statements out there are going to kind of engage with the black community in an authentic manner as well, and pay them for their time, because I think that's really important. Hopefully that's the shift that happens. But what I hope for the most is that we finally have black history in the curriculum, so that people start learning about it, so that we start actually having formal education around that. But how long that will take, I'm not sure. But you know, I never saw it coming that the statue was going to be taken down, and you know, like the world was going to kind of follow suit. So I think I'm more hopeful that we're going to get shit done regardless, and the power is in the young people's hands, more so than it was many years ago. So I think that's the hope that I have, and the vision that I see for the future.
Amazing. Fingers crossed. Yeah, education is so important. And yeah, like I have the same hopes. I'm sure it will happen. You know, just change happens so slowly, and we just kind of have to stay sane as it goes at such a slow pace sometimes. But
yeah,
thank you for talking to me today, Nasra.
That's okay.
You got any plans for the rest of the day? You just chilling?
Yeah, I'm just gonna chill before I go back to work tomorrow. I feel like this is my last day to just chill, catch up on some stuff, and yeah, take a breather. What about you?
I'm probably gonna go to the park and see some friends, but less than six. Less than six is what I'm
Your little
allowed
social
to.
bubble.
My social bubble. Yeah, I'm gonna go see my social bubble. But yeah, lovely speaking to you as always, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Take care. In a
You
bit.
too.